Everyone's muted there. Hi, everyone. So we're live on YouTube.
Hey, I see you.
And hold on. Let me add Discord over as well.
It's great because there's a delay, and I have my laptop muted.
Ah, yes. Definitely you need to mute that, or else you'll be hearing double. Hold on one sec. All right, I'm back. I don't know if you saw that, my light just fell.
No, didn't see it at all.
Okay. Hi, Carlos. What's up? So we are here. Can you guys hear the Discord? If you can you please say that you can, and maybe someone on Discord if you can talk to make sure that they can hear us all.
Hello, can y'all hear us on the Discord? Well, I guess I can just unmute my laptop for a second and see. Okay, words.
Words. Hey, we have someone else.
Music is
It's loud.
music is overpowering, but hey, hi, it's Atomica. They're in the chat.
Hey, Atomica. Oh, if you just want to listen and you want to be on mute, that's totally fine too.
Yeah, no worries.
Oh.
There we go. We got you.
On YouTube, we can't hear Discord, only very softly.
Very softly, yes, and that's what I was saying before. Like, it's kind of low, but I couldn't figure out how to make it any louder, so unfortunately I am like super loud. Let me just turn off the music in the back maybe, and
Yeah, the
hopefully
music in the background is. I can keep my mic really close to my face the whole time.
hopefully that helps. I don't know. We didn't really get any feedback as to like whether they can hear you guys or not, but if not,
Just gonna bring up.
sorry?
I'm on YouTube too, so I can see him.
See what?
Oh, okay. You also have YouTube up, so you're checking to see whether or not the Discord vocals are better. On this wonderful
Let me try to look it up as well. How do I do this? Do I look myself up? But yeah, thank you guys for coming in. We're doing a Q&A regarding D&D today, and we have our local DM, Smash, is here.
Hello. That's me.
And we have Space Rayboy, who joined in on, our usual lasers versus feelings games. And then we have Atomica, who's over on Discord, who, chimes in with some D&D commentary. So hopefully it'll be knowledge, it'll be great information for people like myself and Ray, who know absolutely nothing. Great for Space, who knows a little bit of something, and Atomica, who knows a lot too, can add in. So Space, Smash, I'm gonna hand over the reins to you for a moment.
Well, okay. So the first thing I actually want to talk about is okay, so we've only done the one D&D one shot.
Yeah.
But we've also been doing a lot of lasers and feelings lately. So what is y'all's experience with tabletop RPGs so far? Like, what is it? What were your expectations going in, and how was it the same, or how was it different?
Ooh, so I really knew nothing. I maybe like Stranger Things, that was one reference that I had before about D&D, and then I think I watched a video of the Try Guys when they did their own D&D game, and that was like a brief intro, but I was just watching and passing. I don't have much else.
Here too. All right.
What was that? Did I just lose everyone's audio? I can't hear anyone.
No, no.
Oh,
You still got us. We were just. I heard a noise coming from somebody, but I wasn't sure what it was.
yeah.
Sorry, continue.
Yeah, was that Ray?
Yeah, I just said Atomica is here too.
Ah, yes.
All right.
Atomica, did you want to chime in on your experience with D&D or tabletop RPGs? Mm, yeah. I guess that would be the latest for me too, like the um, Critical Role and oh my gosh, why is the name not coming to me right now? Legend of Vox Machina. That was like the big thing that actually gave me information about what D&D is about. And what about Spacey?
Um, I've mostly played like maneuvering type, like X-wing and stuff, and battle tech, like. But
Okay.
yeah, never been role playing and stuff like that. So, like just like blowing stuff up and whatnot. But like this role playing stuff is like there's a lot more. It's a lot more pieces to it. It's a lot more depth. It's a lot of fun. That's for sure and whatnot. And like who doesn't like to role play and whatnot.
Absolutely.
But I have a lot of questions about the mechanics and things like that. That's about it. But, the one shot was a good introduction.
Yeah, and that's where I struggle with the mechanics. I think that's what put me off for the most part because it's so much information to kind of even process, and it sounded too complicated for me to get into. But
Absolutely, and that's one of the things that becomes a barrier for so many people. Whenever it's like, oh, I found this interest in D&D. I want to share it with other people. Oh, ooh, here, sit down and play D&D with me. Okay, cool. How do we play? Well, here's the player's handbook. And then they see how thick it is, and they get this like deer in the headlights look. And it's like,
yeah,
no, really, really, you don't have to know the whole thing. And that's
exactly.
it's true. You don't have to know the whole player's handbook. Incidentally, the player's handbook is all you need to be able to play D&D.
Hmm. Yeah, and that was the thing. Like when we started Legend of Vox Machina, and then shortly after, you were like, "Yeah, I have some material you can go through," and it was like, boom. There was definitely a lot of
$400 worth of D&D books all at once.
yeah. I was like,
Oh, wow.
that was like us preparing for that one shot, and I was like, I don't even know where to start. Luckily, you like held my hand through the whole thing with like building the characters and everything. And I liked the roll 20 because it wasn't a lot of thinking I had to do. Like I just hit a button and it does the math. But yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, there
And
are a lot of tools like that out there. There's Roll20. Todd was talking about Albert Rodeo. There's a whole D&D Beyond. There's all sorts of different things that you can use, supplements to help your online games just work better. As far as okay, so DMing. Why DM? The purpose of the DM, in my opinion anyway, and I'm going to ask Atomica to chime in on this right after I finish to see their perspective. But I think it's the DM's purpose not to give the players a story, but to give the players a plot. It's up to the players to make the story. For instance, I can make 4 dragons attack. I can even tell you why. But it's up to
mhm.
your players to be like, okay, but how does this dragon attack affect me? Do I have beef with these dragons? Do I not have beef with these dragons? Do I want to join these dragons? Do I want to just say F the establishment, burn everything down with them?
Yeah.
Every action that happens in D&D is going to affect your players. They're the ones driving your story. That's my take on it. Atomica, how do you feel about that?
I love that. How to sprinkle chaos.
Oh yeah, it's like the Salt Bay meme, just with chaos.
It just feels like there's so much to digest first that I would never have even thought that DMing is okay for new players because I don't even know. Someone says they can't hear anyone talking but me.
Oof, big
Gasp.
oof. It might just be very, very quiet because the Discord is being a thing.
How did we. I could have sworn, like, when we did it before today. Yeah, like you said, it was just really quiet. Let me see if I can make any changes, but.
In the meantime, Ray, Space, are there any specific questions that y'all have off the top of your head?
Oof. Just about like how to roll for stats, and, like when to do your feats and things like that, like other silly things.
Oh, okay. So let's tackle this in ascending order. So, okay. Starting with stats. There are many different ways that you can get your stats. You can roll for stats, and that is anything from rolling 3d6 and that's your stats, to rolling 4d6 and dropping the lowest, and that's your stat. Some people will say 2d6 plus 6, so that no matter what, your lowest stat can be no lower than 8. There's also point buy, which I don't know the exact formula for it myself, but there are many different online resources that you can use, such as Chicken Dinner. If you just search for like a 5e stat calculator or roll for stats, you can find that. And then there's also the standard array, which is in the player's handbook, which it just gives you a set of numbers, and you choose which of those to assign to which of your stats.
So I see a comment here from Cathcart. Is this a D&D conversation? I know nothing about it. All I know is from Stranger Things, and that's me too. Well, that's not entirely me. I know a little bit more now, but that's essentially me and Ray. So don't worry. We're learning about it now.
We're going to be talking all about D&D. We're going to be doing advice for players, tips for DMs, perspectives from new players, how to be a DM, all sorts of different things about D&D. So your second question, okay, did that answer your question about rolling for stats?
Yeah, I want to actually do it sometime tonight, maybe. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
These are the Roll20. They have like a tool and stuff. Have you tried that? Yeah, I
Yeah.
tried messing around with it once. It's just like
Yeah, the Character Mancer, which is really good.
oh, cool. Yeah, yeah.
And now we actually have stuff for Roll20 so that our the Character Mancer is actually going to work with everything that's in the player's handbook.
Mm.
Because last time when we were doing our one shot, we were just using what was freely available on Roll20.
Gotcha.
And since then, I've gotten a whole bunch of stuff, and that's why our character sheets were like, I think yours made you a light domain cleric, whereas I think you were trying to go for war domain like Pike.
Oh, I didn't even notice. And at that time, I don't think I really even understood the difference between the different domains. Now I definitely know a little bit more, especially, trying to build other characters. So yeah, hopefully this time everything won't look so foreign on Roll20.
I just saw this comment from Dennis.
Like that.
And it says, I hope you don't mind me asking this. What is a D&D? So D&D is Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, it's a tabletop role-playing game. Basically, so okay, that is actually a really good place to steer our discussion for the moment. What is D&D? D&D at its core is a collaborative storytelling exercise. Tomiko was touching on this earlier, where you are telling the story together. The DM sets the stage. DM stands for Dungeon Master in this instance. In other tabletop role-playing games, it's Game Master, Keeper, all sorts of different titles. It is the person who is running the game. Your players come up with characters. They come up with the backstory for their characters. They choose out of a set of character races, character classes, and you then use the mechanics of the role-playing game to tell a story together.
Yeah. And I think that's a great way to say it. It's like a collaborative storytelling. And it's so, like, as a new player, when you first like put a situation on us, it's like, huh? Like watching it, you can be like, yeah, do this, do that. But when the spotlight is on you, you kind of freeze up and you're like, what do I do? What do I do next? But it's a lot of fun. I had fun that last time.
Yeah, and like as a DM, never be afraid to coax your players, to prod them in certain directions. For instance, Nia does not like taking charge of situations. She doesn't really like. She likes being a passenger to the fun.
Yes.
And so me as a game master, I'm constantly putting her in situations where she has to make tough decisions on a time limit.
For real. For real.
It's not to be mean. It's because you can't really sit in the background in a role-playing game. You are playing a role. You are just as much a part of the story as everybody else. Now, in any sort of like long-standing campaign, campaign being, for the uninitiated, campaign is your entire game. Like each time you meet up, that's a session. Every session in the game is the campaign. So any sort of long-standing campaign, you're going to... Sorry, I got sidetracked. What was I talking about?
We were, I guess,
I was looking at stats. I got distracted.
Talking about pushing your players to, not pushing, but prodding them.
In any sort of like long-standing campaign, you're going to have moments where each person gets the spotlight. Sometimes a player might not have anything to do at the table for a good half hour. And in those moments, but those moments are okay as long as you assure your players that they will be in the spotlight at some point.
I don't mind not being in the spotlight, though.
Well, exactly.
We all
but
know that.
everybody gets a chance to be in the spotlight.
You guys, if you... I try to take like the path of least, what's the word I'm looking for? Resistance. and like they keep cornering me. They made me captain. I've murdered so many people. Well, not so many, but people on accident. On accident.
You're still alive.
Barely. Yeah, that's a good point. And I think
Well, be
mhm.
happy about the fact I didn't push through with my plan to make myself captain. Else you would be dead.
Oh, that's true. That's
You
true.
know, with blanks in the gut.
That's true. But like I like Atomica's point because it's I'm playing as if it's me, right? In this case, and I have to learn to play as if I am my character. It's not about me, it's the character's story. I have to get into that mindset. So oh,
True, but you always can implement some things about yourself into your character.
Ray has
It's
an excellent point there. Yeah.
it's it is you, but with your character. And if you implement some things from your own, it makes it more personal.
that's true.
It's very true. And a lot of people, like, it may sound silly, but a lot of people use D&D as like a therapy. Because you can, since it is the endless world of fantasy imagination, you can imagine an idealized version of yourself if you want to. Or you can make a character that is struggling with something you struggle with. If you have a struggle putting yourself out in front, then make your character somebody who is always out front. Don't give yourself that option. D&D is all about stepping out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And it's not easy to do at first. Role playing is hard, especially like, okay, so role playing, and you heard me say it before, Nia.
Mhm.
Role playing is not all about talking in silly voices or even necessarily acting as your character. Those things help. They're great. They're a lot of fun. I do them myself because I have fun with it. But it's not necessary. Role playing at its core is making interesting decisions with your character, interesting choices with your character. Like Ray was just talking about the plot that he had to take over the ship and to get Dr. Lunar out of the way and to mutiny. And like, yeah, that would have been the chaos, but it would have been interesting.
Yeah.
Like, dude, man, go for it.
Yeah, and for those who don't know what we're talking about, since I am so passive and horrible as a captain, Ray was planning on, I guess, pulling some sort of stunt where he was going to fake pulling his laser pew pew at me. And he rolled the dice, and he didn't know.
It was a pistol. It was a pistol.
Oh, it was a pistol. Okay.
Ammunition. It had bullets.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. That's right. It had bullets. And he rolled the dice and that's another thing I like about D&D. It's that it's not like you can do anything. You have to roll to see if you can do it. And he didn't roll high enough to make that fake scenario. So if he actually went through with it, he would have shot me dead.
Yeah, he rolled a double failure, which in Lasers and Feelings, that means, real bad things happen. He was trying to load blanks into his gun, and he rolled double failures. All right, bet. Yeah, totally blanks in your gun. They were not blanks in his gun. He would have shot her. She'd have been dead.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just seeing some comments on about reacting to the thing. And I'm like, oh, it's me. I'm like, who's talking?
Yeah,
Oh, hey, it's Rabbit Dog. Hey.
Hey, Rabbit.
Hey, Rabbit is here.
And Scrappy says hi. Hi, Scrappy. We missed you. Yeah. So, Where did we just leave off of?
Yeah, we were talking about role playing, and yeah, it's making interesting decisions with your character. And
I don't know
that
who's
keeps tripping me up. I keep hearing like your voice in the background.
same.
What is going? I keep shutting up so I'm not being rude and talking over you.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone on
Look
Discord,
behind.
if you can like lower the volume on the YouTube, because I don't know if then YouTube hears that as well. No, it should be pretty low. But yeah.
So, space. I only answered half of your question earlier. You had another question.
About feats, like when you get feats, how do you level up too? Like, you know, it's kind of like related.
Oh yeah, that's
So
a good
there
question.
are a couple of ways that you can level up in D&D. There's experience, and then there's mileage. I use mileage personally because, like, I don't want the party just thinking like we can go out and grind.
Mm.
And if
What's
you give
the difference?
so the difference between experience and milestone is, if you look up your monsters in the monster manual, they will have an experience value associated with them. And defeating that monster will give you that amount of experience. DMs can also award experience for clever solutions to puzzles, success in social scenarios, all sorts of different things the DM can give experience for. And then you get to a certain experience threshold and you level up.
And
the alternative way, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, just a quick question. So do you keep track of like all the points as you play?
Yeah, there's actually on your character sheets, there's a little thing that says experience. And you can keep track of how much experience you have, and then your DM will let you know if it's enough to level up.
See, that's all the math I was talking about.
The other way to do it, the way that I do it, is mileage level up, or milestone. Yeah, not mileage, milestone. So that is if you reach a certain story beat, a certain threshold on your adventure, your DM will say, okay, you've gotten this far, you did really good just then, you now level up.
Okay. Okay, yeah, that's so is that like then you don't have to worry about the points? You just go by, hey, you know, I think
Yes.
yeah. Okay.
And some DMs do a combination of
Mm.
milestone and experience. That can be a little difficult to keep track of, but that's entirely up to you.
Yeah.
What about you, Atomica? What is your preferred method of leveling up? Also give you the ability to modify the challenge. So you're like, okay, they're getting to a really, really spooky place, or they've gotten really far in their adventure. I want to up the challenge right now because of what's happening in the story. I'm going to go ahead and level them up right now because I know that something challenging is about to happen.
Gotcha.
And they can also just do rewards for like a really, really dope, ingenious strategy that your party pulls off. Because your players will come up with so many things that you could never in a million years have thought of.
I'm sorry I laughed. The comment, will we ever see Nia DM a one shot? You do not want to see that. It will be a disaster. If me.
That's going to be happening soon. On our next episode of this, Nia and I are going to plan a one shot.
Wait, what? No.
Yeah. I'm going to walk you through step by step planning a one shot. We'll run it, but for now, we're going to plan it, and it's going to be a mixture of you and the chat that are going to help plan this one shot.
Oh my gosh, this is going to be a disaster.
That is my idea for our next episode.
I am dead. I'm dead. You guys, you don't want to put your lives in my hands. I feel like the DM plays God, so it's like, mm-mm,
I
mm-mm.
play several gods actually, depending on which system I'm running.
What was that?
I play several gods
Oh.
depending on which system I'm running.
Yeah.
But back to the leveling up. Another reason I like milestone is because it sort of feeds more into the idea that I have about D&D that I think is very important, and that is everything that your players do needs to be earned. Because your players will always be like, they'll always want more than you're willing to give. Let them earn it. Because if you just if you shower, I love magical items. I love high magic campaigns. But if you just shower your party with magical items, one, those magical items are not going to feel as important anymore, as special. And two, you can just break the game with the certain combinations of magical items.
So I don't know what you're saying, but it's entertaining. We'll get there. We'll get there.
For instance, one of my players last time, they were like, "I want to go to the Feywild," and I'm like, I mean, okay, but why? They're like, "I want a pet dragon." You want a pet dragon? I want a pet fairy dragon.
Ooh.
Okay, so you're level 2. No.
Yeah.
And that's the thing too, is as a DM, never be afraid to say no.
Okay. Geez, now I have to pay extra attention if now I know I'm gonna have to do this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This is Nia's final form as the DM.
Jeez, the stakes are high. The stakes have been raised. Let me get my pen. Now I need proper questions, not just oh man, space, I need you.
But I don't want to act like my DMing perspective is the only thing, so Atomica. I just said a whole bunch of stuff.
I'm the only one that's not enthused about this at all. Yeah. So, question about the rules then. So, what are there a set of rules, or maybe your top 3 to 5 rules for either DMing or just D&D in general that you feel like we need to follow?
Are you talking about our personal rules or rules from the books?
Yeah, I mean, is there any?
I gave you 2 options and you said yeah.
I mean, is there any so besides the books, I guess, are there rules that even in your personal games that you don't necessarily not break? like you keep, or
Okay, so there are some rules. Okay, so remember how earlier I said all you need to play D&D is a player's handbook?
yeah.
Okay, so it's true. There's okay, so you have your 3 core books that
Yeah.
are your like D&D 5th edition. You have the Player's Handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, and the Monster Manual.
The Monster
Now,
Manual.
The Monster Manual has, well, exactly what it sounds like. It has all sorts of stat blocks and different creatures that you can incorporate into combat encounters in your games. The Dungeon Master's Guide is not necessary, but it is helpful. It has all sorts of things like a list of magic items, advice on building your story, on building your world, plotting everything out. It has all sorts of like equipment lists, tables, treasure lists, advice for when to give your players treasure, what kind of treasure to give them, how high should the magic items rarity be for what level they're at, that kind of thing. But that's not necessary. There are a few absolutely necessary things. For instance, the concentration rule. There's a rule in D&D that as a spellcaster, there are certain spells that are concentration spells. Those are spells that like you are actively concentrating on for a certain amount of time. You can only concentrate on one spell at a time. That is super important to never break. Because there are types of like concentration spells that if you were to be able to like layer them on top of each other, would just completely break everything.
Gotcha.
There are other things like what you can do on your turn in combat. That should pretty much stay about the same: action, bonus action, movement, and reaction. Other than that,
yeah. So I
don't know. What do you think, Atomica?
Yeah, I mean, core, I wouldn't really have changed it. Like, I wouldn't change, like, how much you play, what your turn, or what your turn, that you need to. So, something is happening. It's subjective, I'll say that a lot of times. I like to have sweet things like
yeah, and I see.
Atomica was I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
I was going to say Atomica had mentioned the encumbrance rule. So there's a rule in D&D that depending on what your strength score is, that is how much weight you can carry. If you are carrying over that amount of weight, you get all sorts of penalties imposed. Now, I don't enforce encumbrance, but at the same time, because, I mean, if a player is constantly having to keep track of their item load, I mean, that can be fun in some campaigns and in some settings. I personally don't care for it. Things like ammunition amount, I will absolutely enforce. That's an important thing. So my first ever campaign, I didn't impose it at all. And my characters, like, by level 17, my players were all walking around with basically just bandoliers of magic weapons. And it was ridiculous. One was literally carrying a boat around. And so what I impose is you can't carry more on you than you can reasonably be able to cart around. So, like, if you use, like, a great axe, you can just carry one of those fuckers. You know, if you have a spear, yeah, you can have a spear, like a light weapon. You can maybe have, like,
understandable.
you won't ever account for the weight of gold Gold's like, it's not extremely heavy, but it's pretty damn heavy.
There is a weight for gold in D&D. I don't use it because that's just mean. And eventually, like, your players are always going to want the one, like, staple D&D item, and that's a bag of holding. And that, does away with, like, encumbrance anyway, because it only weighs, I think, like 15 pounds max.
That's still heavy, though.
Yeah, but it has 8 by 8 feet of space on the inside of it.
Yeah.
And so no matter what you put in there, as long as it fits, it still just weighs 15 pounds.
You put a ball of annihilation inside of a bag of holding.
No, because it won't fit the top.
Probably die like getting close to it.
Well, no, you can like manipulate a sphere of annihilation. I mean, it's a thing you can do. Just don't mess up.
All right. Let's carry on.
Oh yeah, sorry. Something Tomika was talking about earlier as far as balancing. I'm going to be jumping back and forth so much just because that's how my brain works. It's like
same.
It's like you know, like a beehive, right? Okay, so imagine that beehive, but imagine that every single bee in that hive had its own hive with its own set of bees.
Very relatable. So don't worry, yeah.
So with balance, balance in D&D. So I think Atomika's situation of, you used the term you mucked up the encounter, but you really didn't, my guy. And here's why: because challenge ratings are bullshit. So that's how it's set up in D&D 5th edition, and I think in other editions as well. How you balance your encounters, at least your combat encounters. There's a little thing in the stat blocks for the monsters or creatures or whatever you're fighting that will say CR. That stands for challenge rating. Challenge rating can be used to calculate how deadly this encounter is going to be, but they don't take into account, like, sometimes your players just roll bad. Like, the entire encounter, they just roll bad. And so encounters that are supposed to be super easy for them can completely kill them. Or monsters will have, like, special abilities that will be extra effective on some classes. So challenge rating is a good, like, basis, but not, like, super reliable. So you're gonna run into a lot of situations where your players are in a really deadly position and they have to make the choice: do I run? You can do things like, so I don't like playing Deus Ex Machina. Like, if my players have made bad decisions and they have put themselves in this situation with no way to get out, I mean, that sucks, but it really do be like that sometimes. Like, I don't like, being like, oh, well, there's another adventuring party that's out there, and they've decided to come along and save you and help you out. I tried doing something like that once, and my players were like, oh, so none of the decisions that I made really meant anything? Oh, dang, I guess not when you put it that way. And so I haven't done that since. Like, I was telling Atomika, and whenever we were chatting in Discord, that, I'm not out to kill my players, but, like, if it happens through either just, mistakes on my part or mistakes on them, I'm not going to shy away from it. It sucks when a player dies, but, like, there are ways to ease it. Like, you make sure that always give them last words. Like, in your final moment, as you were losing consciousness, what are the final words of so-and-so? Give them a last little moment, and then make sure that you take time for your party to acknowledge it, to deal with it, and to give it some respect. What are your thoughts on that, Tomika?
Hmm. Mm. Yeah. Oh man. You have to be quick on your feet. And I noticed Scribbling Ramblers also here in Discord too. Hey. Maybe the mic's not on. If you just want to listen and you don't want to go on, yeah, that's totally fine.
So about player death, yeah, it can suck, especially if your player, put a lot of time, a lot of effort in that character. It can suck. There is always the option of resurrection, and that's another topic. Resurrection in D&D. Again, back to the concept of I think everything in D&D should be earned. I think that Matthew Mercer's rules for resurrection are really great, and I'll talk about those in a second. So in D&D, there are various spells that you can either your players can learn, or you can get clerics, druids, all sorts of folks to be able to raise the dead. Okay, I see we have some questions here, and I'm going to finish this point, and then we'll get to. Sorry, I never host things. I don't know how things work.
Same.
Am I coming through now?
Yes.
We can hear you now.
All right.
So yeah, everything should be earned. So there are spells and ways that you can bring characters back from the dead. But if they were just as easy as just material components, a few hundred gold worth of diamonds and some time, and their body can't be dead for more than 10 days, but I got you, bro. If it can just always happen with cast of a spell, society will break down. Like, imagine a society where it's like, oh, my king's never going to die because he's going to keep dying of old age, and I'm going to keep resurrecting him. Nothing would ever function. Death serves a very important place in society, and it should in your games as well. Matthew Mercer uses a ritual in which he imposes 3 skill challenges, and each character has to either offer something or say something or do something that corresponds with one of the skills in their skill list. And if each successful skill check will lower the final DC. DC, for the uninitiated, is the challenge level that the DM sets for whatever challenge he's asking the players to roll. 30 is the highest that they list, and that is a very, very difficult challenge. 5 is usually the lowest. Depending on how challenging you feel as a DM task is, that will determine what DC you choose.
Okay.
So each successful skill challenge makes it easier to resurrect that person for the final roll. If they have died previously, that DC goes up a little bit. So it's a little bit harder to resurrect them a second time. I really like that because there's always the chance that resurrection won't work.
Okay.
If it doesn't, again, it's a really sucky moment, but it can be something to drive your story and to really make some great story moments out of. Always, have a talk with your player afterwards. Even if it's just you and them one-on-one, be like, hey, how you doing? I know that didn't go your way. And then, make sure they're okay, touch base with them, make sure they want to still keep playing. If they do, get started, talking to them about their next character.
So I didn't realize you can die and just be that's it. When I was watching Legend of Vox Machina, I was under the impression that they can die, but they can come back because it's D&D. You can just come back. So that changes things for me. Oh man.
Yeah,
Well,
I
it
won't give you
depends
any
on
spoilers.
too, on what
for future
edition.
things. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I mean, it varies a little bit from edition to edition as
Mm.
well. There are spells which can bring you back, as Smash mentioned. They can be rituals. They can be more or less expensive. And it depends on your DM's taste. Some are a little bit more lenient on allowing things like that to happen, and some are a bit more. I mean, everything that Smash said is true. That you have to have some sort of consequence for and reality to things, to an unreal world. But yeah. Anyway, there are raise things that are available.
Absolutely. And again, for anybody just joining us, or for anybody who didn't hear earlier, as I stated before, anything that I say it's completely subjective. Every DM has different interpretations of rules, different things that they enjoy, things that work better with their particular group. Ultimately, D&D can be whatever you want it to be. The rules, like, again, we were talking about some earlier that are absolutely essential for the function and balance of the game. There are, however, other rules that can be bent or completely thrown out the window if that doesn't work in your campaign, your story, your setting. I want to get to a couple of these questions that came up earlier. Let me scroll up here.
There was a question about leveling up. Let me find it.
There we go. Buddy Your Dust asks, hey, I've always been fascinated by D&D, and one thing I was wondering is how do you level up, and how many classes is there to choose from? So we were having a discussion earlier about different things to level up. There are a couple of ways. You can either go by experience points. Each monster that you encounter has a certain amount of experience points associated with it. You kill the monster, you get the experience points. DMs can also award experience points for things like just passing a really cool skill check, pulling off a really cool plan, doing something that just either tickled the DM or impressed them. They can get experience points. After you reach a certain threshold, you level up. Now, there's also milestones, which is you have achieved something. You've finished a certain story beat. You've gotten a certain distance. That's a milestone. You now level up. So the DM can more or less just choose whenever their party levels up. And as far as the classes, let's see. Okay, so I'm going to start listing classes, and I'm going to forget some, and the other people are going to back me up. So you have Artificer, you have Rogue, you have Sorcerer, you have Druid, you have Wizard, you have Warlock, you have Blood Hunter, you have Barbarian, you have Cleric.
Whoop whoop.
Did I forget any? Bard, Fighter.
Monk?
Yes,
Did you
Bard,
say monk?
Fighter, and Monk.
That's all I got.
Ranger. I always forget Ranger because they give Rangers the crappiest classes other than Gloomstalker or Drake Warden. What type of Ranger do you play? Oh, a Hunter. See, I've never actually played a Ranger, and I probably think if I would play Ranger, I would be less biased towards the class. And I don't think, okay, to amend my statement earlier, I don't think the Ranger classes are bad. I think that Wizards of the Coast has been unfair. Like, they've given disproportionately better classes to other or better subclasses to other classes than they have to the Ranger. Yeah, I misspoke earlier. Yeah, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything changed up the game in a lot of ways, in a lot of really refreshing ways. It added for a lot more customization options. For instance, so one of the things that Wizards wanted to steer away from was just because you were born a certain race doesn't necessarily mean that you're better at something automatically. Like, they don't want all elves to want to be, rangers or druids because of, like, the wisdom buff. So instead of just, you are a drow, so you get a +2 to this and a +1 to that, you can then choose your custom lineage, regardless of what character race you choose. I want +2 in this, and I want +1 in that. And that has opened up so many different options for players, as far as like, okay, I never wanted to try this race before because I didn't like the stat bonuses it gave, but I always thought it had a really cool flavor. Now I can play it and still play what class I want to play.
Gotcha.
Also, to answer the final part of the Spaces question earlier, you get your feats. Okay, so there are 2 things that can happen on certain levels. I believe it's 4, 8, 12, and something else. Yes. So at these threshold levels, you can do one of 2 things. You can either get an ability score improvement, or you can choose a feat. Now, ability score improvements, you can either give +2 to one of your stats, or +1 to 2 of your stats. So that's just, raising your stat points. And choosing a feat, there's this whole list of really cool options in the background for feats. There are things like crossbow expert, which allows you to use a crossbow as a light weapon as a bonus action, and it ignores the reloading property, so you don't have to like use your bonus action to reload your crossbow. You can just keep firing it, and all sorts of different things. There's the lucky feat, which gives you a pool of dice that you have each day that you can just re-roll any of your rolls.
I need those.
Yeah, there's all sorts of feats, but you're deciding, do I want to make myself better at my skills, or do I want to give myself more options and versatility? It's the Sophie's choice of D&D.
I like that there's so many choices, but it does make for like it makes it hard to keep track of all of everything.
See, a good thing for players is kind of have an idea, like look at what you get, like your following level, as soon as you level up. Look at what you get your following level and kind of plan what you want, so that whenever you do level up, you'll have an idea, all right, this is what I wanted to do with this level.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, even beyond the threshold levels, like you get stuff for your class and your subclass between those levels. So I mean, you're always getting more options, and that's another reason why like you don't want to level up your characters too fast, because you don't want to overwhelm your players with stuff. You want your players to slowly learn how to play their characters and keep adapting and figuring out how to use their moves in new and interesting and unique ways.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But with so many options, you have something very much to choose, and that's my problem. My zodiac sign is twin, so I have problems with making choices.
That's why I'm a DM. I'm everybody in the world. Gemini's for life.
Wait, where's all the Aries? No one. Dang. I know. Boo.
So, Space, did I answer all of your questions earlier? I'm sure you have more.
Yeah. The collective doesn't have any more again.
He's like, I got
First
questions.
thing I had written down was why do Rangers suck?
Oh, okay, again, I do need to clarify. Rangers are not bad, but Wizards of the Coast gave them not great subclasses. Them and the monk, honestly.
Really? I heard great things about monks.
Oh, monks are amazing. Monks are incredible.
Yes.
Ah. Mm. Mm. And also, the only thing I remember is that they don't age. That's it.
Timeless body.
Yeah. Oh, they age slowly.
Yeah, so do druids, I think.
Hmm.
I could be misremembering that. Yeah, there you go.
That's not
So,
bad.
now that we were talking about different classes, I think it's a good time to talk about like different party roles. So, hold on, I heard an ooh from somebody.
Yeah, that's me.
Oh, what was the ooh about?
Well, the party rolls.
Oh,
Let's
okay.
see what the plan is, and then I'm gonna talk.
Sorry, I thought you were trying to say something, and so I was trying to like give you your room to speak. Okay, so party roles. Now, there are so many different types of play within D&D. Oh, and we'll talk about that some in a bit too. And depending on your type of play, that's going to really depend a lot on like which characters are going to shine. Different characters have different roles. For instance, like you'll have your party's face. That's the person who is going to do the most talking. They're usually a person that has a high charisma stat and usually proficiency in like intimidation or persuasion or deception. A person like that with their high charisma,
Take notes.
you know, if you have a 20 in charisma, you're getting a +5 automatically to all of your charisma-based skill checks. So anytime you have to persuade somebody or intimidate them or lie your way through social situations, you're going to need a face. Characters like warlocks make great faces. They get these things called warlock eldritch invocations. One of those is called Mask of Many Faces, and that allows the warlock with that invocation to use the disguise self spell at will. So they can constantly be in disguise, make their way through social situations. You combine that with the actor feat, and you can mimic people's voices as well. Yeah, you're done in any social situation.
So,
but you know, you're also going to need people who can break into things. Rogues are great for that. Everybody can pick locks. Rogues are just really good at it.
just thinking about Vax. So in Vox,
roles always determine everything too.
In Vox Machina, who would be the face of the group? Would it
Scanlan?
Who?
Scanlan.
Oh, Scanlan. Okay, gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I could see that.
A lot of times, what class you choose, and how you allocate your stat points. Certain classes favor certain stat points. For instance, monks, you want to have high dexterity, high wisdom, because those will determine both the saving score or saving throws for your monk abilities, as well as like your armor class. Clerics, they're going to want like a high wisdom, high con, because your constitution determines your concentration checks. So if you have a spell that you're concentrating on and the enemy does damage to you, you have to make a constitution saving throw. You have a high constitution, that's going to determine whether or not you can maintain concentration on your spell.
Right.
So because you have to allocate stats in certain ways, certain classes usually end up falling into these roles because they have these type of stats already. Your stats reflect how good your skills are.
Gotcha.
But just because you're playing a certain, you don't have to play it like that at all. That's the great thing about D&D. Like, I love playing against type. I want to see more gnome barbarians or Goliath rogues, you know?
Why is that?
What do you mean? Why do I want to see more playing against type?
Yeah.
Because D&D is a world of infinite imagination. And, like, there's nothing wrong with playing this way, with, you know, min-maxing your stats and being like, I want to be the best at this. But I personally think that failure is just as fun in D&D as success. Because with success, you have a reasonable idea of, like, what's going to happen next. With failure, you have no idea what's going to happen. And it can lead, like, you know, the situations that you talk about for, you know, weeks after aren't the situations where you go and you sneak in through the building and you sneak past security and you open that lock super easily and you take the treasure and you exit out. You don't have any encounters. Like, those are fun. Those give you a feeling of success, but, like, you're going to forget about them by next session. The real things you're going to, like, remember are Dr. Lunar accidentally killing Captain Darcy by screwing up the nanomachine.
Accidentally, quote unquote.
It was an accident, okay?
We're still talking about that.
Yeah. Yeah, you're
And
right.
that was the result of a failure, and yet failure doesn't have to be bad in D&D. Like, there is no winning D&D. Like, you can get through the story, but, like, you know,
That's a good
there's
point.
No
That's a really good way to shift your frame of thought surrounding failure and anxiety from, you know, feeling like if I roll badly, I'm gonna mess up again. You're right. We're still talking about that how many weeks later, so
and you know, mess up, especially, like, you know, if you have a character and they're attaining a certain goal and they're right to the point of achieving it and they fail at the final moment, it can suck. But then you have that question, how is my character dealing with this? What is happening now? Where do I go from here? And you as the DM, you can find ways to where they can have this as a learning experience that helps them succeed later down the line. You know, it's like, oh, you messed up with this, and if it's really important to your character to not fail, you can find ways to maybe not allow them to succeed in that moment, but it's like, oh, you messed this up, you broke the artifact, but inside the artifact there is a map that leads you to this place. You can do stuff to help keep from, like, having your players walk away disappointed.
right.
Like, there's a difference between having your characters walk away from a failure feeling good about the failure and walking away from the failure feeling bad about it. And a lot of that is going to be determined by how you DM. Thoughts from Scribble and Atomica on this, because I've been talking for a long time again without.
Yes, water.
I just mentioned on the YouTube chat there that actually the mistakes and the jokes, of course, are always what get remembered. No matter how long you've been playing, it's the crazy things that you remember later on, years later.
Yeah, I'll never forget the time that my party's cleric, the newly minted cleric, who was a monk for 7 levels, just sacred flamed a shopkeeper in the eyes. She specifically said, I want to sacred flame him in the eyes. All right, yeah, okay, like, I'm going to let you do this, but why? Because I want to. All right, your god's not going to like this.
Oh, wow.
She was following a goddess of peace. Eldath, the goddess of peace. She was following her, and Eldath is like, no. Took away her cleric powers for a bit.
See, when I play The Sims, which is not related, but like, you know, ish related. I make my players like level 10s on everything before doing anything. So like failure, you know, regarding like playing and messing up, that was like giving me so much anxiety, and that's why I was like, I don't want to be captain. I'm just gonna sit in the back and pet my robot cat. Yeah. And by the way, he does like the best voices. I hands down.
None of my voices are good. Okay. None of my voices are good, but I fully commit to every single one of them.
You commit. You bring props.
Be a good voice actor. It's just like commit, you know?
No, it's amazing. Even Dennis's voice, which we always forget him.
Oh God, yeah. Oh, hold on, I don't even know if I can do it right now. Hello. Hello. I would like to become Dennis.
Yeah, we got Dennis.
And Atomica and Scribbling, do you guys do voices too when you DM?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so if it sounds like voices is a prereq for DMing, and I don't have that down, so
It's really not. It's really not.
Mm. Mm.
Like, you don't have to do, even if you do decide to do quote unquote voices, you don't have to do different accents. You know, you don't even have to change your voice. You can just, you know, you can speak in a different way, or you can, you know, just like tone it down, or do different inflections. You know, because
Right.
I can be talking to you like this, and it can mean one thing, but if I'm talking to you like this, I mean, you know, it might mean something a little bit different. If I'm talking to you like this, well, then you done fucked up.
Right.
That's all my same voice, but each was a different tone. And, you know, you always want to differentiate your characters. If you do decide to do voices, one very important thing, you want to keep an NPC list. And, like, you know, jot down, like, the name of an NPC, a little bit about them, like a description of them. Especially like your important NPCs that your characters like come back to and talk to repeatedly.
Mm-hmm.
Have like a full character sheet for them, you know, including like abilities. Give them a class. I mean, they don't have to be like player classes. You can make them like, you know, something different.
Yeah.
But give them abilities just in case your players want to decide to drag them into combat or force them into a combat scenario.
That's hard.
What is the dragging them into combat scenarios, or keeping the list of the character sheets?
Keeping the sheets for them all.
I mean, again, you don't have to make full character sheets. Like I know, the basic stats, and so I'm going to write down, this person has a 15 wisdom, they have a 20 strength.
Dang.
Whatever.
Do you have one for Dennis?
No, because that's a lasers and feelings game.
Right.
Right.
Dennis's number is 2. There, he has a character sheet now. He's an intrepid blob.
Dennis is like some kind of space deity or something like that, because like he has like transfer into like.
Oh yeah, Dennis is 2 raptors now.
2 raptors, yeah. That's something
Dennis is 2
whatever.
raptors.
It's just the form he took when we met him. It's something entirely different.
But yeah, so
Yeah,
if you
he's
have like a long list of
Plus
characters,
right now.
your important NPCs, you want to know who they are. Like, you're not building characters, you're building people. People are going to have different motivations. Write down their name, any affiliations they have. Like, this person is with the Mages Guild, so and so. Write down any relevant information that they can give to the party, and whether or not they're willing to share that information. Because they could have to be coerced. It's like they have the information, but it's like, screw you, I don't know you. You're not high up enough in society. I'm not giving you that information. And then, your party has to figure out, okay, they have this information. How do I get it from them? any like enemies they have, whether or not they're quote unquote good or evil, even though I don't like using those distinctions, whether or not they're antagonistic to the party, just little notes about who they are. And this is with your important characters. Also, make like a little note next to their name of like, okay, this person has a gravelly voice, this person has a southern accent, this person speaks with this dialect, whatever. Because your players are always going to remember how this character sounded, even though this happened a year and a half ago in my campaign. I don't remember this person. Oh wait, they're in my notes. They sound like
Oh my gosh. Does that happen?
yeah.
So is there like some sort of notebook to help you organize all of this? Because this sounds like a lot of. It sounds like something you should put on your resume. I have DM'd, I have organizational skills, and my gosh.
DMs are people who weren't satisfied with writing a book. People are gonna live my stories.
Yeah.
I didn't say it was for people who couldn't write a book. I said they weren't satisfied with writing a book.
Right.
As in, the book was not enough for me. I want people to live my stories.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
That is too much. No, it sounds like a lot of work and a lot of juggling.
So there are two schools of thought. There are the, okay, I hear this advice all the time, and it's bad. It is, don't over-prepare. So this is a statement that needs to be broken down. Because I personally don't think there's over-preparation. However, if your own preparation is becoming overwhelming to you, stop. Because I think, you cannot prepare for everything. You cannot prepare for 80% of the things your players are going to do, especially if it's a new group. If it's people that you've been playing with for a while, you can kind of get a feel for people's play styles. I mean, you're always going to have those one or two wild cards. That
Space.
Just, yeah, you've seen how I play before, but I'm doing something weird now.
Array.
But you never know how they're going to react. So you can prepare a rigid storyline and have everything mapped out down to the T, every single NPC interaction, every single possible scenario. And your players will oh, okay, cool. We're gonna spend the next several hours chopping down this tree. We're going to make a raft, and we're gonna sail across this river. All right, fine. I'm going to give you a bunch of rolls, really difficult ones, to make this a very difficult challenge for you to do, to try and coerce you to not do that. And they're going to, roll nat 20s on every single thing. They're going to get across that river. Nothing I planned for over on that side of the river. So rigid plans like that will always crumble as soon as they meet your players. There's that old saying, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, or no plan survives first contact with the enemy. No real rigid structure of a DM session is going to stand up to your players. How you counter that, in my opinion, is don't have, whenever you're planning for your sessions, have basic story beats that you want to happen. Don't make them things they absolutely have to happen in this area. Make them fluid so that you can move them around to where your players are, so that thing you want to happen in that session still happens. Also, understand your world. This is where this is why I don't think there's a such thing as over preparation. The more you understand your world, the more you're like the more readily you'll be able to respond to those crazy things your players want to do. So it's like, I know what this town is. You know, I know everything down to what it manufactures and the trade routes around the area. My players are like, all right, I want to charter a ship from here to here. Oh, okay, cool. I happen to know the trade routes in the area, so I know what path the player's ship is going to take. You know? It's those little things like, you don't absolutely have to do it, but the better you understand your world, the more ready you're going to be to respond to your players. Atomic Scribble.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah, preparing to a level where you feel comfortable enough that if you had to run out, you're going to say, when I first started DMing, I was very much okay. I just wanted this.
Wow. Mm. Hmm.
I think too, getting back to what Nia was asking, there are a lot of tools available that can help with preparation and with tracking campaigns, with all those kinds of things. And like Atomica was saying, do it to your level of comfort and don't exhaust yourself. Just, I mean, the more you can prepare, generally the better, but you can just whip something together and everyone can still have a really great time. And you can use pre-published adventures, you can use pre-published campaign settings, all those kinds of things, which can make your life a lot easier when you're trying to prepare things.
Interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah, and
so
lost myself again.
Quick question, like what is your routines, if I can call it that, for when you prepare for, like, is there a certain amount of time you spend and things that you do when preparing for pre-existing campaigns that you've been running versus when you're starting up a whole new one? Like, what are, because we just show up as players, we're just like, yep, we're here, I have my dice, but like, what do you guys do on the back end before each game?
Well, so it really depends on whether I'm running a module or a campaign of my own creation. The difference is a module, for the uninitiated, is a pre-published adventure set out by Wizards of the Coast or by other people who make modules for TTRPGs. But it is a basic guideline and a story that you can expand on or shrink, tailor as you wish. I recommend people who are starting, because I used to think, like, whenever I first started DMing, I was like, no, I want to make my adventure right now. And like, I did it and it worked. But then I ran a module. I ran, what did I run? Lost Minds of Phandelver. And I don't personally, like, I don't enjoy modules as much as I enjoy making my own campaign, but I'm so glad that I played that module and ran that module, because it gave me a good idea about how an adventure can be structured. And once you know how an adventure can be structured, then you have a better idea of how to plan out not only a campaign, but each individual session. As I stated before I'm planning my sessions, I go through my notes about what happened last session, see where every one of my characters is at, and think, okay, where are they going in their adventure? Are they in the middle of the dungeon? What is their next goal? Because the last thing you should do, by the way, at the end of every session is ask your characters, like, okay, what is like your goal? Where are you going next? You know where your players are going, you can then plan for that. So depending on what's happening in the story, what's happening in the world, what the players have chosen to do last session, that's going to determine what I want to happen in this session. So like I said before, I'll have certain beats that I want to happen in each session. Like last session, my characters were exploring a couple of ruins. I knew what was in the ruins. I knew what was happening around that area. So I'm like, okay, they're going to go to the ruins. If they go to this one, this, and this is going to happen. If they go to this one, this other whole set of options is going to happen. If they don't do any of that, I usually try to have a few like story hooks going on around that don't necessarily like affect the larger whole, but are like little busy work or little ways that I can feed my party extra information.
Yeah. And I see another question that popped up about if we're only interested in D&D. And to answer that, we have done lasers versus feelings. Space, I think you were recommending a couple other games that I can't remember the names. And I don't know if Honey Heist is a movie or...
I can get a copy of the rule set of Honey Heist. We'll totally do it soon.
So that is an RPG game. Okay.
Yeah. That and Adventure Skeletons is one, which is pretty dope. We'll probably play that sometime soon.
Yeah. So we were like thinking about doing like weekly games, right? And maybe like a one-shot D&D monthly. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking about doing like weekly one-page RPGs, like special event D&D one-shots. And then, we had discussed The Thing, which I don't know if you want to talk about that right now or not. That's entirely up to you.
You know me. I'm just like, yeah, whatever. Go with the flow. But if we want to flesh it out, we can flesh it out. I don't know. We can see how things go. But there's also another question here, which you guys will have to answer. How do you make a map/quest as a DM? Is it like a script, but with multiple different outcomes, or do you write it another way?
Okay. The first thing is, do we want to finish, or do we want to start answering this question, or do we want to finish hearing from Atomica and Scribble for the last question? Because only I answered that.
Yeah, let's hear from Atomica and Scribble, and then
I probably played upwards of 20 different RPGs because I do a lot of convention play and stuff like that. And right now, my main game is Pathfinder, which is almost identical to D&D. It's actually just an offspring of D&D. I'm a firm believer that the rules don't matter nearly as much as having a fun story and a fun group and doing what your group wants. So
like, what is your process for like preparing for a session?
Oh, preparing for a session. I'm sorry. I always like to. I'm mostly running online right now, as well. So I always have to. There's that part of the preparation as well, which is to make sure all the maps are put into my virtual tabletop, that I've got everything set up the way I want with that. I always review all the main monsters to make sure I'm familiar with all their special abilities. And it never hurts to read a bit further ahead in the story than you think you're actually going to get that night. But as I said, I usually use pre-published things. So.
Yeah, anytime you're that's an excellent point. Anytime you're running a module, like you want to like read through it before you run it, you're never going to remember the entire thing all at once. You just want like a basic, guideline. Okay, how's this going to go? All right, cool. I like this. Good deal. And then that way you'll know, like, you'll have a good idea. Do I want to expand this? Do I want to shrink this? What do I want to do with this? And a lot of that's going to depend on your players. But whenever you're planning a session for a module, definitely read a little bit ahead, further ahead than where you think you're going to be, because sometimes your players will spend 10 minutes on something you should take an hour, and vice versa.
Yeah. Mm.
Yes, that's an excellent thing to do. Always have like a list of random names, and if you want, you can even like separate them by like character races, so that you can make these are dwarvish sounding names, these are elvish sounding names. This name sounds like it could belong to an owlin, and so that if they encounter these type of people, they're like, oh, I want to talk to this person, or I want to grab. A lot of times you'll hear from your players, I want to grab somebody and ask them. And it's like, oh, okay, you see a random half-orc on the street. Cool. His name is, I don't know. But if you had a list of names, right? His name is Bam. Then you mark it on the list. And then that is another NPC that you have in your back pocket. There's just a random guy they talked to on the street. But now you have a face with a name and a voice that you just have in this town that you can then turn into anything if you want. I'm insane, so after each of my sessions, whenever I'm going through my notes, I start thinking about my world and what's happening in different places in my world, and I start trying to find ripples. And by ripples, I mean things that the characters said or did that is going to affect either the story at large, the area at large, or the world at large, because I'm insane, and I go through extraordinary lengths for my players. There's tons of stuff happening in the background that they will never encounter in a million years, and then I'm like, I gotta think about it. But that's just, again, I'm insane.
That's a lot.
Because of the style of GM I am, I often will also plan ahead my jokes.
Yes.
Gee, that's a lot to do. And how long are each of your sessions when you do either whatever game you do, or does it matter as to which game you do? Like, is it longer or shorter for Pathfinders, or, the honey something?
Honestly, us playing 4-hour lasers and healing sessions is insane.
Okay.
It's so awesome.
I thought 4 hours was like the standard.
For a one-page RPG, 4 hours is a long-ass time. But it's like, it's good. It's fun. We always have a great time when we're doing it.
Gotcha. What about with Pathfinder?
So Pathfinder is basically the same as D&D. So, but I've been involved in games that run for 2 hours and run for 8 hours. So,
whoa.
And when I was younger, longer.
Oh my god. Okay, so that explains.
I will keep my players as long as they let me. I will keep my players. Like I told you the other day, I had a D&D session that ran 10 hours.
Yeah, that's crazy. And what about with the honey heist? Is
Again, it really just depends.
Just depends. Gotcha.
Because Honey Heist is a game where, I mean, it's a heist game.
Is it a one pager also, or no?
I'm not sure if it's a one-page RPG, but I know it's a really short, simple RPG.
Okay.
If you're curious about it, Critical Role I actually did several sessions of Honey Heist as like a side thing for their one shots. Because I believe Marisha Ray is one of the creators of it. I could be wrong about that. If I am, somebody correct me.
That's pretty cool, if it's true.
But it's fun. You're playing as bears. You're bears.
You're bears? Oh, honey. Okay. That's
Yeah, you're bears
cute.
looking for some honey.
Gotcha. Okay, I love that.
Also games like Trash Pandas, where you play as raccoons. Yeah.
Interesting.
There's all sorts of little mini RPGs out there. Atomica, how long do your sessions usually last?
It depends. Most of the time, so anywhere to 3 to 4 hours.
Gotcha. So then what about the question about how you guys make a map/quest? Is it a script with different outcomes, or do you write it a different way?
Well, again, so much of D&D as any tabletop RPG, honestly, any role-playing game where somebody is running it and you're having an interaction between that game runner and the players, so much of what happens is going to depend on what your players do or say. So many things are going to fly out of your mouth as a DM in the moment that you're going to have to be like, well, shit, I have to figure out what that means later. For instance, one of my players, in his backstory, there's this thing that happened where his parents were trying to create this strange flower that makes like a shared experience, and something happened to the flower because his parents, their aide, ended up killing them to try and steal the research. And the flower ended up like shooting him with spores, and now one of his eyes is like a flower bud. So they got really, really close to a crazy intense source of magic, like a magical ley line. And so his flower buds, like in the moment, things were happening, and he got right next to it. And so his veins started glowing a bright purple, and his flower buds started to bloom, pushing back his eye patch. And I don't know what that means. I have no idea what that means. I'm gonna have to figure it out. Like in the moment it happened, it was really cool, and he had just like this shock. He also had the what does this mean expression on his face. But so you have your basic mission that you want to put your players on if you're giving them a quote unquote quest. For instance, in our D&D one shot, I gave them the quest for Kegasis von Tepper to obtain a deck of many things that people he had hired to get it absconded with into the Feywild. So their quest was to go to the Feywild, find these bandits, get the deck of many things back, and bring it back to Kegasis von Tepper.
We did not make it.
Action and some craziness with some rolls. That way. They got the deck of many things, used it a few times, some craziness ensued, Ray exploded, or space exploded. Space exploded. His head exploded. And then they took back the deck of many things and were trying to teleport back. Somebody interrupted the spellcaster as he was
Todd.
And they ended up in the elemental plane of water.
Yeah.
And they got eaten by a kraken. And so I didn't plan for that to happen, but in the moment, because of all these things that were happening, I'm like, all right, well, yeah, this is what's happening. I do want to read something real quick from the Dungeon Master's Guide that goes along with that. And that is this one paragraph that says the role of the dice. Dice are neutral arbiters. It can determine the outcome of an action without assigning any motivation to the DM and without playing favorites. The extent to which you use them is entirely up to you. So in that situation, I made a roll to see if the wizard was going to maintain concentration on his spell. It was a percentile roll. It was below what he needed, so he did not maintain concentration. I then used the dice. Instead of just me deciding, oh, well, you're talking to him? Yeah, that's going to mess up his spell. Seems a little cheap. Like, it would have been fine if I would have just decided it, but I decided to leave it up to the dice. And then I made another percentile roll to determine where they would end up. And they ended up in the water.
So I guess
there was no getting out of there for them, so
No.
the most epic way I could end that story is them being eaten by a kraken.
So it's kind of like a mix then. Like you had a general guide that you created, and then there was the dice, and then was there something?
Make a plan, but don't be so rigidly attached to your plan that you can't account for any variables. Because
Right.
again, your players are always going to do things you don't expect.
Yeah.
So have a general outline, but don't be surprised if it doesn't go according to plan.
And-
Atomica and Scribble, y'all want to expand on that?
Yeah, have an outline, but don't be afraid to remove your outline in case things go sideways because they always will.
As well, I mean, you can have a map set up ahead of time with like different encounters in different rooms labeled and all of that sort of thing. I've seen so many ways of preparing an adventure. You can have a flow chart if you want ahead of time. Whatever is the best way for you to represent the story that you think you want to do with your players and that your players buy into. So some people want you to have a ton of stuff written down ahead of time and we can go anywhere in this dungeon or whatever it is. So you need to prepare our maps and what's in each place. Sometimes you're doing much more of a player-driven story, and so you don't have to prepare things ahead of time quite nearly as much. So you don't really have to have maps for that. You can always just kind of do them on the fly.
Gotcha. So it's probably better to prepare more if it's like new players like myself, whereas more experienced players may help kind of move the story without too much like rigid planning. I love that. Sprinkle some chaos.
Yeah, there's a stigma towards the word railroading in D&D and in tabletop RPGs. Railroading, like strict railroading, is bad because you want to give your players agency. Like, you never want to take your choice away from your players. Because if you're just dragging them along this pre-made track you've made, that's just telling them a story. That's not really giving them any license in the story. At the same time, can be okay, and like Atomica was saying, a nudge, a gentle push, to kind of like keep them on track. Because my first ever D&D campaign, I made an entire map, an entire world map. I made places, I prepared for them, but I couldn't prepare enough for everything because I was trying to prepare everything. So since I made that world map and I gave it to them almost immediately, it was bad because they're like, ooh, this place has a cool sounding name. I'm like, it's going to take you 6 months to get there. Okay, cool. We set off now. Okay. All right. Figure this out. So like what I do now is I do have like a general like world map whenever I'm starting out, but just like shapes, maybe some continent names, you know, and that really depends on if I'm making an entire world. You don't have to do that. There are entire like RPG campaigns that take place in a single city. I like big expansive worlds, so that's what I do. But instead of like giving my players the full world map at the beginning, I'm like, okay, this is the region you're in right now. You can probably get a map of that region. And there's, you know, probably a couple towns. How do you space out towns? Well, it really depends on what setting you're doing. If you're doing like the quote unquote medieval fantasy setting, you want to make your towns, your villages, and your cities roughly like a day, maybe 2 days travel apart from each other.
Yeah.
But that also depends, like, you know, is this area settled? Is this area out in the boonies? You know, once you get to more like civilized areas, you're gonna want stuff like a day, maybe 2 days of travel, because if you think about it, like, you know, your farmers, your peasants, this is the amount of distance they would reasonably travel if they're trying to get to a place. If they're like, oh, it's more than 2 days travel away, nah, I'm staying home. So it goes again, like, you know, I'll make continents and I'll be like, okay, this continent is it's dry, it's arid, it's sort of like this place, and just a couple notes. But like, as the campaign goes on, the more my players are teaching me about the world, because your players are going to change your world in ways you're not going to expect. So depending on that, that's going to change, like, you know, what I build. There will be entire like areas, entire like countries on my maps my players never go, and because they've never gone there, they're just names.
Yeah.
But like, if I want an important event happening in a certain place, I'm gonna expand more on that because stuff is happening there, even if my players haven't gone there yet. You know. And you can tease a place and not have anything other than a name, and then the closer your players get, you can expand
Start
on it.
to
And
flesh
if it's
it.
not quite ready that yet, you can put obstacles in their path.
Okay. That's a good tip. That's a good tip.
Yeah, because your world, it should be a living world. Like, things should be happening. The more things that happen around your players that they have nothing to do with, the more lived in your world is going to feel. The more lived in your world feels, the more easily your players will be able to slip into it.
One tip I've seen before, if you're looking to start as a DM, design a hometown first. Rather than look at designing a world, design a hometown for your characters first. Then you can design a city. Then you can design the country, and then you can expand outwards from there. And
gotcha.
That way, you kind of avoid some of what Smash said happened in this first campaign, where people were running off into the far side of the world. But also, it gets you practice with designing just something small first.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And another thing too that I really like doing, that I've started doing recently, is whenever I'm building a homebrew world, I give my players some time. I'm like, okay, where are you from? I'm like, you can either choose a place that I've made. We can, like, you know, go over what vibe your character's going for, and if it fits anywhere that like I've made, they can be from there. If they want to be affiliated with any organizations I've created, they totally can. If not, give me an organization that you're affiliated with. One of my players was like, I was a cadet in the Royal Academy. I'm like, okay, no, I'm sorry, that was another game. One of my players in this campaign was saying that I'm from this place, but my parents studied at the Starling City Consortium. So I was like, okay, that tells me that there's a place called Starling City. It has a place called the Consortium, which is apparently a place people can go to attain knowledge. That tells me a lot about that place already. So depending on their backstories, they can give you more to add to your world. I like to have them like build their hometown, give me a couple of NPCs in that hometown, not like designing whole things. They don't have to draw it out or anything like that. They can just give me like a general vibe for the town. Certain things that like they want to be there that I will include, and then like I'll just fill in the gaps and expand everything from there. And then I have a little piece of the world that my players have crafted that I can incorporate into the campaign. Either it's just existing there in the background, or they can visit it at some point. Because they've given me a couple of vibes for NPCs, I know a couple of people that are there. Based on those people, I know what other kind of people live in that area. You know what I mean?
And that kind of
it lets your players feel like they are more part of this world instead of just being guests inside of it.
Yeah. I think that's a little bit of what like Space wanted information on too, like building your character, building that whole process. I mean, Space could probably ask it better than I than I can. Spacey. About the building your character process. I think you had some questions about that too.
I think we kind of covered everything. It's like,
We
I
did?
was wondering, like, how much the background would matter, like, how much you have to memorize your background as a player, not even as like.
As much as you want. I mean, your backgrounds, like, they give you different perks. But as far as like you hold to that background, it's entirely up to you. You know, like if you choose the soldier background, you don't have to currently be a soldier. You can be a mercenary who at one time was a soldier, or you know, you just had a family member that was a soldier and they taught you everything that they knew, you know?
Yeah, gotcha.
Also, like, if you're searching through the backgrounds and you don't see any that you like, work with your DM. More often than not, they, being me in this case, will say, yeah, we'll do that. One of my characters wanted to be a doctor, and so they wanted to have a doctor background. That's not really a thing, so we worked together and we made a custom one.
That's cool.
Yeah, you can always work with your players and customize pretty much anything.
Do DMs hate familiars and stuff? I've heard that before, like, you know, like keeping track of like
that is entirely up to each DM. I don't hate familiars because, like, if you're talking about like the conjure familiar spell, that just poofs out of existence and then you have to summon it back. If you're talking about like pets, I have said this before and I will say it again. I will stop killing my players when they remember to consistently feed them.
Wait, is K3 alive?
Out of their armor whenever they have to go underwater.
What about Scribble and Atomica? How do you guys feel about that?
Absolutely, yeah. And to expand on what Atomic is saying, like, flaw, to me, is one of the most important things you can give to your character. Because whenever you're building a character, again, you're slipping into this role, and you are navigating this avatar through this world and through this story, making choices for them. So don't make something two-dimensional. Make a person. People are flawed. Nobody's perfect. We all have something Even if it's okay, I'm going to use the fatal flaws from the Percy Jackson series. I flipping love those. Percy's fatal flaw is he will always choose his friends first, even over the safety of the world. So it's like, okay, you can use that in a D&D setting. If Percy Jackson was a D&D character, all right. So the Mad Lich has your party member with a dagger to their throat, and they say that you return to them their phylactery, which is the Lich's one weakness, or they will kill your friend. And Percy says, all right, my flaw is I always choose my friends first. Here you go. Here's your phylactery. And then the Lich, slits the person's throat anyway because they're evil. Duh.
Dang.
But it makes for a great story moment because, and see, that's the thing too, is never be afraid to play character. People, especially, I don't want to make a flawed character because I'm worried about failing. But failing is not bad in RPGs. It's not. Because you can make so much out of it. Give your character weird mechanics. I was recently one of my players in my last campaign. They were playing a tiefling who their whole society felt that because of tiefling's infernal blood, they were cursed, and that they would eventually lose their minds and kill everybody around them. So these people, every time there was a tiefling born in their society, sent them off into this dangerous land to basically fight until they died, so they could die with honor. And the tiefling went there, and they drowned, and something happened, and they came back. It was a whole warlock story, but I digress. But
that's nuts.
Because of their trauma, anything that anytime their homeland was mentioned or anything, they made a personal roll, and if they got above a 10, they were fine. But if they got it below a 10, they would act really reckless or really combative or over the top. And it made for it happened a couple times in some really tense social situations, and it kind of caused some really bad things to happen, some chaos, and really messed up a lot of things. But instead of the players being why are you doing this? You're messing up the game. They were like, oh my god, I can't believe that just happened. Okay, we gotta figure out what to do. We gotta figure out how to fix this.
Yeah.
It's like a blood chemistry mechanic or something.
Yeah. There's a difference between doing things like that may mess up, the mechanics, but for story purposes it makes sense. There's a difference between doing that and then doing things to maliciously ruin other people's fun. So an example of that is two examples from my previous game is there was somebody had a cursed weapon that if somebody tried to forcibly take it from their hand and got a certain distance away, they would have to make a strength check to do it. If they succeeded with the strength check, that person instantly died.
Whoa.
They didn't know it. They cast Identify, but that curse wasn't revealed by the Identify spell. They just knew that they did not want to let that dagger go. It was theirs, and if somebody took it from them, it instantly killed them. Yeah. It was a situation. One of my players did that, but he didn't go into it knowing that it would kill her. He was just okay, I recognize that this dagger, you're acting really weird about it. Because she had been. So he took it away, and I'm you feel a string, some kind of force going taut. Make a strength check. And he made the strength check, and he got it away from her, and she uttered her last breath escaped her, and she fell down dead.
Oh.
That was a thing that happened. That was an unfortunate thing, but that wasn't maliciously trying to mess up somebody else's game. That was just an unfortunate result of the circumstances. That same player, however, they had to sneak into a city and try to free it from the people who were controlling it at the time. And so they were they snuck into the city successfully, and the 4 players were making a plan about, okay, we're in the city now, we're going to hunk down here, we're going to look for other people, and they're making this plan to infiltrate the city and like look around and see if there's any like less dangerous way of taking it over. Which was great. It was wonderful. They were RPing about it. They were making plans. They were writing stuff down. They were drawing maps. It was wonderful. And the problematic player was like, I walk out the door. Do I see them? Yes, you see them down the street. All right, I walk right up to them. His thing was like, it's what my character would do, which is a polarizing phrase in the D&D community and in most RPG communities for the exact reason I'm talking about. One was a character stumbling into a situation that they didn't know about, and the other was like, okay, I'm bored with what's happening right here. I want to be the center of the attention, and I want to drive the action forward. I don't care what the rest of my players around the table are doing. I'm doing this. And him running out and confronting the people forced the other people to run out and follow him, or he would die. That is a crappy player behavior. Any expanding on that from Atomica and Scribble, because I did the thing where I talked again.
I'd say as far as the backgrounds and flaws, I basically agree with everything that was said. The only thing I'd say is when you're thinking about your character, as a player, I always like to leave some room. Don't decide everything ahead of time, because a lot of times when you're playing the character, you will find out more stuff, fun stuff about the character, personality, and you can even, add in some stuff about, oh, well, you remember back when I was with the Thieves Guild in that other city. And a good GM will usually go along with that kind of thing. As long as it's not disruptive to the story.
Yeah, like you can't do things like give yourself unlimited funds as part of your backstory.
That'd be dope.
One of my players was a queen's daughter, and she hadn't been home in 40 years, and the first thing she did was like, hey, I want to go to the treasury. Like, no, you cannot give yourself unlimited funds as part of your backstory. No. That's literally what she said. But I'm a princess.
Taking notes.
Yeah, what Scribble was saying is absolutely true, 100%. Like, don't make your character complete. Yeah, they're not finished. You're going to learn so much about your character at the table just from playing them that you never would have thought of. It's like, my character really likes to sit down and challenge people to dice games. You just decide it once on a whim, and it becomes something you do every single time you go to a tavern from then on. You're like, oh, yeah, my characters are apparently, they really like gambling.
Anyway, guys, I go smoke a cigarette, then I'm going to bed.
All right.
It's probably super late for you.
Yeah. What was it?
4:04.
Oh, goodness, Ray. Yeah, you get some sleep.
Yeah. Good night, Ray. Thanks for joining.
Of course.
And that's also the thing, too, is depending on the things that happen in your story, that's also going to affect your characters. Sometimes you're going to be put in really difficult moral choices, and depending on that, like, the one thing about D&D is you kill so many people. So many.
And horses.
Walking morgue. Yeah, and I mean, that's just like, that's part of like, just what at least D&D is as a game, and probably Pathfinder as well. And a lot of like RPGs that have combat mechanics is then you're playing for so long, you have so many combat encounters, you have racked up quite a body count by the end of the game. So it makes a lot of like moral choices extra fuzzy.
And you can also have things happen like, maybe in your very first adventure, you almost get killed by a giant spider. So suddenly you develop arachnophobia.
Yeah.
Yes. That's one thing that I always add anytime I get lulth into the mix is I add compulsions. If they have enough exposure to lulth. It's like, you have had this much exposure to lulth. okay, so you now, every now and again, you just feel like spiders are crawling all around.
Oh. No, thank you.
See, they're different, like, fun. You can, depending on, like, what game you're playing, you can incorporate other mechanics from it. Like, Call of Cthulhu has a really good, like, madness mechanic. Yeah.
I hear my cat.
Absolutely. And about session 0, let's talk about that for a little bit. So session 0, what is it? Why do you do it? How is it done? A lot of different ways is the answer to all of those questions. Your basic session 0, there's very little like actual playing D&D, quote unquote, that goes into it. Session 0 is mainly where you meet up to decide everything about the campaign. You know, you want to get what kind of theme your campaign is going, what kind of story it's going to be. You want to ask your players a bit about, you know, you can start building your characters. If your characters have already been built, you can then like expand more on them. What kind of character are you trying to build? What kind of story are you trying to tell with your character? What sort of things do you want them to experience? How do you see them shaping it? You can then talk about guidelines for the campaign. You can talk about house rules. It's a great time to have a conversation about table etiquette. About, you want to ask your players, you know, what their expectations for the campaign is, whether that be, you know, what sort of game they're wanting to run, whether they want it to be like a high seas adventure, you know, a political intrigue thing, a murder mystery whodunit, or, you know, have all of those elements. Do you want it to be a heavy RP type of game? Do you want it to be a heavy combat type of game? Do you want it to be high magic, high fantasy, low fantasy, apocalyptic, post-apocalyptic? What type of setting you're going for? You want to tell your players a little bit about your world.
So is this like separately with the group or just like all together?
This can be, okay, so there are other methods of doing it. Like you can have your session 0 where you just like talk about all of this, and then you can have like a couple of like pre-session sessions with a couple of your players, especially if a couple of players decide that their characters know each other beforehand, or if all of your characters know each other beforehand, you can have like a little like test game to be like, okay, this is how these characters are getting to the starting location, and this is what happened to them on the way. To sort of like set up a dynamic between the characters who know each other, or you can just have the classic trope of you walk into a bar, there are a bunch of folk there. What do you do? That's the classic quote-unquote D&D opening.
Gotcha.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways you can do a session 0. I usually try to ask my players pretty much the same questions I just asked you. You know, it's really important that you, as the DM, know what your players' goals are, like what they are trying to accomplish both as a player and both as a character in your game. Because they could be going for something, they could have an idea in their head that you think will not work in this setting, and you have to then talk to your player about like, okay, I don't know how you're going to achieve this in this world. Either I can make some changes or you can make some changes, and you can then have that discussion on how some things need to be altered. I usually try to tell my players go big in their backstories, because it's easier for me to rein in a player's backstory and be like, okay, you need to make some changes, you need to make some cuts, you can't do this. You know, it's easier for me to rein in a player than to be like, okay, you have this, but I need more.
Right.
You know what I mean? Session 0 thoughts, Atomica and Scribble.
Absolutely necessary. I think now, with the current time of D&D, very much mandatory. I think they should be. It's a good way to sit down, around, not everyone is coming from a background of playing. So you want to make sure that there are certain boundaries that won't be crossed.
Hmm.
Players feel comfortable. That's very important also. And just really setting difficulty and letting go. So that's very much a key thing. I have a house full of people. That's my people. It's encourage other players. If personally destructive, which are not like viewers time.
Mm.
Zero is very important.
Mm.
Bringing forward a little bit on that, on what Atomica was just saying, it can be also important to either in a session 0 or often it's better to do it privately, find out if there are any particular subject matter
Mm.
or whatever that's going to bother your players. So, if somebody has like a real phobia about zombie movies or something like that, well, maybe you cut the zombies from your adventure. Or
Yeah.
there's a lot of other possible triggering behaviors
Right.
or material that you can have, and just you should take that into mind. There's also resources available that you can use, which are things like the X card, where basically a player can put up an X when a DM's going on too long about a particular thing that they don't like, and there's basically just no or another player is doing it, and there's basically no questions asked. You just move on to the next part of the adventure.
Huh.
So
that's a really good
those
system.
are the kinds of
I like
things
that
that
a
are good
lot.
to add on etiquette.
Yeah.
Sorry, Michael. Right.
Mm. Huh. Wow.
Yeah, I was actually I talked to Nia about it before. There was a time that I didn't check with my players, and I absolutely should have. Yeah.
Mm.
One of the worst things, like one of the worst feelings as a DM is inadvertently, triggering somebody with either an emotional or physical trigger, or a memory trigger that you didn't take the time to ask, and you ended up crossing a line that you didn't even realize you were crossing, and it really hurt your player. I told you the thing that happened resulted in one of my players breaking down in tears and leaving. They didn't return to that game, and it was all because I didn't take the time to check with my players if there were any specific triggers that they had. So yeah, absolutely what Scribble was saying and Atomica was saying, just check with your players. And like they were saying, it doesn't have to be, in person. I mean, I'm with the group. It can be one-on-one, side by side. I've told people in our Discord channel, if there is anything like that, any subject matter or anything that's particularly triggering or hurtful for you, tell me about it beforehand, and I will endeavor to not have it in the games. Because, I mean, I'm a storyteller. Bad things happen in stories sometimes. Horrible things happen in stories sometimes. It's not, it's just the story, but at the same time, experiencing that story, especially in a role-playing sense, when you're already in such a state of vulnerability,
right,
those things can impact so much heavier.
Yeah.
it's not necessarily necessary to have something formal like the X card or the green, yellow, red. But it is always important as a GM in that session 0 or ahead of the game to just make sure your players know that they can tell you that if there's something that needs to be avoided, that they should tell you.
Yeah, the more you communicate between players and GM, and even between players and players, the more communication you have, the better. It'll make for a smoother game all around. And it's not even stuff that's, even potentially triggering, just stuff that can make people uncomfortable. You want to discuss whether or not inter-character romance is going to be a thing in your game or not. Because some people find it super rewarding. Some people, it skeeves them out. They're like, no, I don't. Either they don't want to do it themselves, or they just do not feel comfortable even being around it.
Oh.
And that's okay. But other people find it super rewarding. I think it's great, dude. If my players want to get together, go for it. Love each other. Gives you something to fight for. Makes for great story and great drama, especially if they break up. Oh, I love it. My sister and her husband, my last campaign, their characters broke up because they just could not see eye to eye on anything. And it was the most wonderful drama. The tea was so spicy.
That's hilarious.
And always never feel like you're stopping the game and slowing down the pacing to just be like, hey, just remember, guys, there's a difference between us and our characters.
Yeah.
But again, you have to be really careful with that statement too, because somebody can just be being a complete dick to somebody and say, "Oh, it's my character." And I mean, you just never be afraid to say no. Never be afraid to check somebody. A quick snap. Hey, not cool. Moving on. I mean, it really, again, that's situational, because depending on the person, it could be better to just, do it like that. But depending on the person, it's like, hey, don't call me out in front of everybody. Usually taking your player aside one by one or one-on-one is the best way to deal with any sort of confrontation. Because, I mean, it's gonna happen. You're a bunch of different people, and you're playing a game, and you all have different visions for how things are supposed to happen.
Right.
But just respect your other players, Players respect the DM, respect the fact that they are devoting a lot of their time in order to make sure that you have a good time. But at the same time, DM, respect your players, because without them, you would not have a game. The respect should always be going both ways.
True.
Do y'all have any more thoughts on that? Any more table etiquette specific things?
The only other part I mentioned there is even something as simple as language, like swearing.
True.
That there are various levels of comfort, and you have to make sure that that's something that can be discussed.
I have a mouth like a sailor, BT Dubs. Is everybody cool? I can easily curve it.
I remember.
What?
You were talking about player romance. I also run into the issue of, being a gentleman of a certain age, and if I'm role-playing a female NPC, I have to make sure that everyone is comfortable with that. And especially if there's romance involved or things of that nature.
I never would have thought.
Oh man. Okay, so one of the trope of D&D is the bard will try to seduce everybody.
Yes.
And I mean, it's not all bards, of course. there are exceptions, but it happens enough that it is a trope. The bard will try to seduce everybody and everything. And I mean, you know, I'm me, so I'm just like, all right, whatever. But other DMs, like I don't act out sex scenes in my D&D games. Like I do the Lulu, we're fading to black. Steam is starting to cover the mirror. That sort of thing.
Stage left.
You know, I will absolutely be super flirtatious or, you know, over the top as my D&D people. You know, depending, and it doesn't matter, you know, which gender I'm portraying. It's just
Or android.
It's just traces. Oh yeah.
We have already had.
That was all scrappy.
I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying stuff has happened. Stuff has happened. Cigarettes were smoked after.
It was literally it was my first time doing was this before or after the D&D one shot?
After.
Okay, so this is my second time DMing for them. And just like, within like 20 minutes of the start,
Yeah.
The robot was inserting things into the ship slots, and it was obviously a very sexual thing. And like, I'm also thinking like, okay, there are like 3 other people here. How are they feeling about this? I'm pretty sure that Adam from Roll20 literally got fired for this exact situation.
What? Who?
Yeah, there was a whole Adam from Roll20. He used to do D&D live streams, and the last live stream he was on, there was a character that was playing an android, and the mechanic was inserting things into, and it was a very sexual thing, and she got very, very upset.
Oh, okay.
He got big fired.
I do remember you're like hesitant about like, can I keep going? We just all kind of stood back.
That was a situation where I should have asked first.
No, but you kind of were. I could tell you were being a little cautious, but you sensed the room. Everyone was like laughing and going along with it. So
He didn't respond at all. He didn't say at all. So no, don't do that, please. We just keep quiet, and keep laughing, and you kept going. So it's fine.
I mean, they were having a good time. We couldn't. Who are we to step in?
And again, like you know, it can even be other things. Like I kill a lot of children in my games.
Oh.
A lot, like a whole lot.
Oh dang.
And I like most times if I'm using zombies, they're zombie children.
Oh
A lot of people might really be upset with that in games.
no.
Yeah, and like that's absolutely understandable.
My.
So, again, it doesn't necessarily have to be sexual things. It can be like any content that you think people at my table might have a problem with this. It's better to check than it is to not check.
Yeah.
And frequently it's actually horror games in a more horror themed adventure.
Mm.
That's the one you have to make sure that people know that they can speak up if it's going beyond their comfort zone.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah. One of my players had to stop just because we were in a really, really tense situation, and they were on the verge of like a real life panic attack. And they were like, I need some time.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, take your time. Let's take a break. We're good. You okay? Can I get you anything?
Oh man. Yeah.
Well, they had a lot riding on that session. And they were very invested.
So I guess we need to have like some sort of yellow, green, and red cards for Discord. I don't even know how that would work.
They're like just the little color splotches you can throw up as like an emote.
It's a safe word. We all know about this.
What's our safe word?
Pineapple.
Oh.
I don't know, man. You can find a lot of reasons to use pineapple in an RPG setting.
tropical adventures, I guess.
The point of the safe word is that it's supposed to be a word that you would never really hear in that situation. That's why
Yeah.
saying the safe word is mommy is actually completely appropriate, because you're not usually saying mommy in the bedroom unless you have some very specific kinks.
Oh.
I am not shaming. You know, you do you. We don't shame this family. Sorry, is this monetized? It's not anymore. I owe you money, Nina.
No, is it? I don't know. Is it?
I owe you revenue.
Did we have an ad on here? I have no idea. It's too much.
That's all happening on your side.
I know. I have to like go in and see. I think it is on.
I think a couple of like advice for players building their characters. So you don't. Again, we've talked before about how you don't have to have your characters be complete. What really helps you whenever you're building your character, your race, your class, and your background can inform so much about who your character is, or at least where they came from. Once you know where your character came from, that's pretty much all you need. You know, you don't have to have like a detailed multi-page backstory with all sorts of different characters. What I usually tell my players is, where'd you come from? How did you get to being the type of class that you chose? Like, how did you obtain your skills? What happened there? What are your current goals? You know, you want your like a half a page to a page is good for a backstory. You know, I try to tell my characters, try not to include information that your character wouldn't know. Because then they can have like elements, things that happened, but they only know what happened from their character's perspective. So then I, as the DM, can then be like, okay, I know what happened in their backstory, and I'm going to take that and use it in the campaign. You always want to find ways as DM to tie what's happening in your story to your character's backstory. Either having their own specific adventures that revolve just around that backstory, or some way that their backstory connects to the main larger plot that you're trying to do with. Because that will make your characters, again, feel like this is their story. This is their adventure. It's not just an adventure that they're being walked through. This belongs to them. So yeah, have you know, some events that happen. Give a reason why you started traveling. Because that's the thing in D&D is, again, we talked about adventurers having a huge body count. But like, being an adventurer is constant battle, being tired, sleeping outside a lot, being in fear, being chased, constant like stress and fear, and no sane person would ever do it. So why have you chosen to be an adventurer instead of staying on your farm and raising crops and selling them in the market?
Good point.
Because I mean, you have to have a reason why you're traveling. And sometimes, and this is very important, your character that you make does not have to stay the whole adventure. They can be like, oh, I completed my goal, and like, there's still some work that I kind of have to be doing here. Best of luck to you guys. I love you all. I'm out. And that doesn't mean that you have to leave the table. You can come back next session with a new character. Entirely up to you. But it is up to you to decide when your character's story is finished.
Interesting.
Now, I mean, it can be a super ballsy thing to do as a player, and it can disrupt a lot of things. If a player feels like their character's story is done, or they're just like, okay, I don't want this goal anymore. I found out that this isn't what I wanted. This is what I want instead, and I can have that here. Yeah, dude, I'm staying. Absolutely, dude. Okay, well, yeah. We'll work out a scene for how this happens, and then we'll go from here. Do you have a backup character in mind? You know? And then that character doesn't even have to stay out. They can be like, I'm bored and I want to try this different class for a while, so I want this character to step in temporarily, but I'm designing them to be they're going to leave character. It's really up to you as the DM to decide whether or not you want to allow that. and up to them as players to like go through with it.
Yeah.
But you should always leave room for your character to be shaped by what's going on around them. Because a character can start out like, you know, they're a company man, they are involved in this organization, but then they realize that organization is up to nefarious things. So they have to then have a choice: do I stay with this organization that I've known my entire life and devoted my life to? Do I fight against them, or do I just, you know, fuck off and go somewhere else? I'm going to be a pirate now.
Was someone just about to say something? No, maybe not. I lied.
I think I cut Ray off.
Ray, you're still up.
Yeah, I know. This is interesting. Things I want to know about. So when Smash start talking about this stuff, I just was about to click off. Oh, wait a second. So I saved. And it's now 4:30. So I'm still here.
We can always do a part 2, or I don't know, like it's interesting to. I wish we had this before doing. Well, no, the one shot was also fun to just be thrown in, but it's a good session for us to at least, you know, get a little background and everything. We can probably do another part 2.
Because I already have background of my D&D character with Todd.
Yeah.
Since we haven't used it at all,
True.
I can also use it here.
True.
If we had had this before the D&D one shot, none of this would have meant anything to you.
That's true. That is so true. I would have been so clueless.
Did Atomica and Scribble have anything they wanted to expand on with what we were just talking about with characters?
Nothing to add to just that. Actually, I stepped away to grab some dinner.
Oh, okay.
What are we eating?
I ordered Chinese takeout tonight and Hakka.
Ooh.
Fancy. I have my my Burger King chicken nuggets.
More importantly, I had to feed Apollo and Artemis. So.
Oh.
You make a cigarette again, and after that, I'm really gonna sleep because I'm fucking tired.
It's like 4:30 in the morning for you, Ray.
Yeah, 4:35 right now.
Yeah, time to go to bed.
But it is fun. This is fun.
Absolutely.
So, just like always with LNF 2, I always stay up late.
You do.
That is true.
Because we're having fun.
Well, we'll
Atomica, you were gonna say words about characters and character building? Absolutely. Yeah, my last player character that I made was a like I had the idea that I wanted him to be like a grifter because I wanted him to have because we were playing the what is it Witchlight Carnival, the new module that came out. Yeah, and so one of the backgrounds of that is the preparation that you make is your characters lost something to the Witchlight Carnival whenever they were a child. Whenever they broke in, without a ticket, and so they were kicked out and they lost something. So I had this idea for my character that what he lost was the memories of his family, but not like amnesia, more like he retained all the memories, but everything having to do with his family was scrubbed for them. So he would remember sitting around a table for dinner that was empty, but he knew the number of chairs, so he knew how many people were supposed to be there. He knew what he lost by the shape of the absence it left in his life. And so since he lost everything having to do with his family, he didn't even know his own name. So my idea for him was that he was a grifter, a con man, a person who every single time he met somebody, he gave them a different name. The one he stuck with mostly was Erasmus Kane, but he was Cecil Coldwater and all sorts of different things. And I played him as a genie warlock, and I gave him the what is it? The really good liar background. Charlatan. And yeah, so that was his concept, is that he was just really, really good at lying and was constantly giving different false identities. And it was a really good growth experience to see what situations he would actually tell the truth in, and what character interactions would lead him to trust somebody enough that he would reveal things about his past, about what he was looking for. Those things that I try to make characters with potential for growth. For sure, I always talk how she gets a lot of crap as being Keyleth, but I think it's brilliant the way she plays her characters, because she plays entire character arcs. Keyleth started out as an insecure mess. I say that with love because I'm an insecure mess. But she grew into a strong, capable leader after, realizing her own strength. Bo was a complete asshole, and I'm not giving any spoilers, by the way, Nia. Bo was a complete asshole at the beginning, like a punk kid, irresponsible. But by the end, she was loving, strong, responsible, capable, devoted, an amazing person. Because Marisha plays full character arcs. And that's what I like to do. And yeah, like Atomica said, you don't necessarily, like what I was originally saying with your background and your class and your race shaping a lot of your character. You can do it that way, but like Atomica said, you don't have to. I'm also a huge fan of playing against type. Like I said, I want more gnome barbarians and Goliath rogues. Because whenever you're playing against type, you're like, my character shouldn't be good at this, but like I'm gonna style on people. I'm gonna be the sneaky big ass dude, half giant.
That would be interesting to see.
Oh yeah, it's great. I had a really I had an elven barbarian who was a high elf barbarian. So generally, like how they're written in D&D is very, very aristocratic, very hoity-toity, very bourgeoisie. So this elven barbarian, like anytime he would rage, it was less of like a and more of like he was throwing a hissy fit. So he would be like, I'm gonna rage. And that was him. He was lovely.
We need to start streaming our D&Ds or one shots or whatever we play.
Yeah, absolutely. We can totally do that.
But
I mean, it'll be. We'll have to figure out something with the sound quality. I know, like right now, my situation sucks because of the fact that all of my equipment is cobbled together.
So I wanted to see, like, I'm gonna share the link for this the StreamYard, because I don't think you need to have any, like, you can do it on your phone too, and you don't have to show up on video. You can just join the link. Spacey joined before, no video, and I think you joined on the phone, right?
Yeah, I suppose if I had actually like come home at a decent time of day, I could have.
No, it was like at 5. So next time, like if you guys, or even after this, if you want to like see if you can join on the StreamYard link that I provide, and then it would we would all be on here, so the sound would be good for everyone and no echoes because it won't be on Discord and StreamYard.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that.
Yeah. Let's try that after.
The video thing is less about me like giving a shit about how I look and more about my phone battery draining because my phone is like 6 years old.
Gotcha. That's right. I remember now.
The charging port is like screwed up to where like if you, regardless of like how I plug it in, it always says check your charger connection. It's going to be finished charging in 5 hours. And it's on 80%. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. Or if you wanted to try it on your computer too, you can try it. But like, I'll send the link for this or for a different one. I'll start a new stream that will be unlisted, so no one has to like, like, what are they doing?
I'll probably try it sometime.
Yeah.
Soon. But okay. So other things. What else were we going to talk about? Space, you still there? Did you have more questions? You have more questions. I know you do.
Oh shit, my mic was like. No, I got nothing. Yeah, the last question I had was like, like you used to seduce a dragon, but like,
Oh, okay. So yeah, you seduce to the dragon and you roll a 20. But unfortunately, the dragon is a top. So bend over, buddy. The dragon's super into it, but the dragon's a top. So I mean, so that's the thing about 20s. 20. Okay, so in the D&D 5th edition rules, 20s and 1s only actually matter in combat. But I mean, you can use them in other situations. But like rolling a natural 20 does not automatically mean that you succeed. It means you have a much higher chance of succeeding. But I'll give you a for instance. You go up to a king. The bard goes up to a king with their plus, 12 persuasion. They say, "Hey, king, give me your throne and your entire country." They roll a nat 20 with their plus 17 in persuasion. They have a 37 that they just rolled in persuasion. So a lot of people would think, okay, that means I win. That means I get the king's crown, the king's throne. I rolled a natural 20 on my persuasion. It's super high. But if you think about it, no king is just going to, like, logically just give you their crown and their throne and their country. So in that situation, it's like, okay, the king chuckles at your insolence, finding it very amusing instead of infuriating, and does not immediately execute you. It's all about, like, you do have to have limits in your game. Like,
yeah.
Where you can be grounded, be grounded. Because once you have places where you're grounded, you have a base to then build on. And you can get crazy, and you can get expanded, but you can always return to that point of grounded. I do stupid things in my D&D games. In every single world of mine, moss always grows towards civilization. Every single person in the world is born with 50 foot of hempen rope. And it's just, little silly things that don't really affect things mechanically, but, they're fun. What now? No, it's coiled around you.
Around the umbilical cord.
Think Heigoku or Radit. Yeah, dude, like most towns, they won't even let you in if you don't have a 50-foot piece of hemp rope. You're considered a second-class citizen if you don't have your rope. But that's just a joke on, like, every single starting character starts out with 50 foot of hemp and rope. So everybody might as well be born with it. So yeah, DMing is not nearly as intimidating as it looks. Again, understand your world so that you can then react on your feet to your players. Ad-lib a lot. Even if you have no idea what you're saying, you can decide what it means later. Have basic stuff mapped out. That's what I can think of off the top of my head. Atomica, Scribble, I'm going to pass the floor over to y'all. Do y'all have any specific DMing tips or tips for players?
For players, yeah. For players, just honestly, just at least have a basic understanding of their
Mm. Mm. Ooh. What are not the answer? Oh.
Well, everyone dies.
Mm. Okay, yeah.
How about you, Scribble?
I guess my thing is to both players and GMs, don't be afraid to try stuff
Mm.
or ask how you can try stuff. If you're a player, especially for new players, it's always good to just say, hey, listen, I want to do this. I mean, yes, you need to know what's on your character sheet and what you can do. But at the same time, maybe you can come up with some plan that isn't 100% covered by the rules. And usually those are really fun. And the same thing is true for DM when you're starting out. Within the bounds of all the stuff we've discussed before about being peaceful with your players and stuff like that, you can still try different styles of running things and different settings, different, whether it's more horror themed or straight up just build a loot fantasy, whether it's a heist, whether it's a murder mystery. There's lots of fun things you can try out, and they won't all work. But, well, that's it for me, I guess.
Okay, yeah. Trying.
And that's also like a really, really good things were said there. Change up your styles of playing. Run a murder mystery, run a heist, run a dungeon, run combat. So many different tiers of play, and you can do all of them. You can do none of them. You can make up something totally new. The rules, they're there and they're great. Not everyone need apply. The rules are there to gamify the story. They're there to support the story. Just like what Scribble was saying, your players and even you as a DM are going to come up with all sorts of things that are not strictly covered by the rules. Work with each other. Be like, okay, player, tell me what you want to do. I'll figure out what you need to roll in order to make that happen. If they're pushing a bit too far, don't be afraid to tell them, well, let's veer that direction a bit. How's about we do this? And a lot of your players are going to want, so a lot of people are coming into tabletop RPGs from video games.
Mm.
So a lot of players have that video game mentality, which but doesn't really gel with D&D. It became almost a meme in my D&D group when we first started playing together. Was like, all right, you get to a new city, so I suppose you want to immediately go to the magic shop and the weapon shop without talking to anybody at all on your way there, right? Yeah, that's what we want to do. Okay, cool. And so do different things like how weapons are set up in D&D. You're not going to, okay, I'm at the next town, so I'm going to find a better weapon. There's not really like, you know, in D&D, your basic weapons are what you get. But if your players aren't really like enjoying that, do something about it. Make a table. You can get your weapon sharpened, and for 24 hours, it'll add an extra D4 to your damage. You know, do something fun like that to make it more fun for your players. It only takes a little bit of work, or you can find tons of online resources of people who have already homebrewed tons of stuff like that. One of my players decides he wants to use poisons a lot. Poison is not really super well supported in D&D 5e. Even with like the new poisoner feat, it helps, but it's not really a thing. You get a lot of creatures that have resistance to the poison condition and resistance to poison damage. So if you use poisons, there's not a lot to support it. So me and him work together to where he gets different materials and researches the materials, and those materials I roll on a random table, and that material provides this effect. So you mix these effects together, and you can make a poison that will, one causes hallucinations, which does psychic damage. One, when interacting with organic material, causes fire to appear, does fire damage. You know, stuff like that. Stuff that makes the enemies, reduces their speed by half. Tons of different stuff.
I see
DnD
here.
Discourse. This is a really great question. Go ahead, Anne.
Yeah, I was just about to say the question. Go ahead.
You know what? I'm going to let one of them answer it first. Scribble, Atomica, one of y'all answer first. I'm going to give you a spotlight.
What was the question?
The question is, you might have already covered this, but what about DMing interests you? The answer will shape how you should go about it.
For me, it's both a creative and a social outlet at the same time. Because you can be acting, writing. It may involve visual art skills, but it also involves involving people, and most importantly, in my case, humor. My sessions often devolve into bad times. And I don't think I'm the only DM that will probably say that. But that's the thing, it's a real cooperative thing. And also, I must admit, there's a little bit of me that likes to be behind the scenes, sort of a bit of a control thing that I don't quite get the same way when I'm playing, although I also enjoy playing. But DMing is a level above for me for that. And that's it for me.
Did you have sessions where you planned so much ahead and everything goes awry because other players go a different route?
Yes.
Most sessions?
Oh no.
I'll answer that here in a second after Atomica answers the question that was posed. Yeah, that's a great answer too. For me, yeah, it's definitely a combination of that. I've talked before about how DMing and playing D&D has really revitalized my creativity. there's that, plus the social interaction. I like that sense of vulnerability, because in order to roleplay, it doesn't really seem like it at first, but it is so vulnerable. You're putting yourself in such a vulnerable state, and there's a kind of honesty there that even though you're not being yourself, there is this weird kind of honesty that comes from playing your characters and seeing your players around you making these people and shaping these people and turning these people into heroes is amazing. That feeling whenever there's a really, really intense battle and somebody finally does the last bit of damage and you indicate that the battle is finished and seeing them jump up and cheer, or whenever I'm running a horror scene and everybody's just really on edge, it's that burst of emotion that everybody around the table is feeling, and you're able to kind of control the ebbs and flows of it and just keep your players on edge as much as you can, or on the edge of their seat rather. And also what I really like doing, especially if it's people that I'm really close with, I'm the therapist friend. So oftentimes I will use D&D for people who are really close to me. I will use D&D as a way to get people to confront situations that I think they need to confront in order to grow as people.
Ooh.
Because I'm the meddler therapist friend.
And suddenly it makes sense as to why you want me to DM.
Yeah, totally. You can fix people. But no, like a good friend of mine, his very first D&D campaign, his very first time ever playing, he was having he was on the outs with one of his friends, and his friend was like getting into some really bad stuff, and he was trying to help him, but like he just couldn't, because sometimes you can't help everybody. So this was a crazy campaign where I was just like throwing stuff at my players, all sorts of random things, because it was a new group of people that we were deciding, are we going to work together as a D&D group? So it wasn't as structured as my normal campaigns are. I did crazy things like throw the deck many things at them. And he draws a card, and it's the card that it gives you a level 5 fighter that is basically thinks it was their destiny to serve you. And eventually it came out like in conversation, this character whose name was Lee overheard my friend and another one of the players talking about how, we have sex bots in the chat.
Oh. How do we do this? How do you block user?
Yeah. So
Thanks.
basically the character found out that he wasn't real, and he got really upset because he felt like everybody was lying to him, was making a fool out of him, all sorts of things. He took the cursed sword that one of my players had, the cursed sword that was whispering and trying to take somebody's soul, and kind of teamed up with it and ended up becoming the big bad of the campaign. It was a really like crazy thing that just happened out of nowhere. And so what ended up happening is there was this crazy scene towards the end of the game where they had defeated him, and they had the choice whether or not he could save him or end his life. And he ended up being able to save him through some really, really lucky rolls. And my friend came up to me afterwards, like a couple of weeks after we had ended the campaign, and was like, hey, thank you for that ending, because with the stuff that's going on with me, it really, really kind of helped put some things in perspective, and it kind of gave me the feeling of being able to save my friend. And I was like, it was probably like the most emotional moment I've ever had as a DM, was that him thanking me afterwards and kind of seeing what I was doing. So that's long story, less long. No, still quite long. That's what draws me to being a DM.
Nice. And then I also see a comment here. As a longtime player and sometimes DM, my advice is ham it up. have have fun playing the NPCs your players will interact with. Your enthusiasm will mean a lot. Which
Absolutely.
yeah.
Nia and Space and Ray all know that I'm fond of hamming it up.
Yes, and like I said, the voices, everything, it just makes it so much more, I don't know, like it puts you in there.
Oh yeah. At least one of my shopkeepers in any of my campaigns is always going to sound like the Resident Evil 4 shopkeeper.
Mm.
What are you buying? Got a collection of great things on sale, stranger.
I love how you both had that, like, said the same thing. What are you buying?
Oh yeah. He's classic. Such a great character. Because you know nothing about him other than the fact that he has weird eyes, is entirely in a trench coat that is just festooned with guns, and just talks like a pirate. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
By the way, they're gonna remake Resident Evil 4 for the PS5.
Oh, okay. I hope they don't crap it up.
Wait, is Ray
Coming
still
next
here?
year.
I was just about to say Ray is not gone to sleep yet.
We're a bad influence on Ray.
We are. I probably need to wrap it up soon too, though. Oh.
Because I was listening to you three telling about your DM stories.
Oh my goodness.
Well, do Atomica, Scribble, do y'all have anything more to add to that?
No,
Well,
nothing
then-
more to that.
I think in that case, I think it's about time that we wrapped it up. Join us next time
Yeah.
whenever we are going to be putting out a one-shot.
Yes.
Can we
Let's do
ask
that.
what people are going to plan to talk about next time so that we have an idea how to pre-plan the session?
I think this is
Did
awesome.
you see my message, by the way?
Oh, I did not, because right now I have the voice thing open on my phone, but I will see it shortly.
Yeah. Like, I think we should do this. I don't know if you want to do it like bi-weekly or how frequently you want to do it, but maybe we can have like a topic around to, I don't know, whether it's like the session 0 and talking about etiquette, like have a theme and then we can kind of go over stuff more in depth. Maybe. What do you guys think?
It might
Yeah,
be good if you had a question that you wanted to, as the host, if you have a particular subject you'd like to cover.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, maybe we should do this like this week we'll talk about, blah blah blah, and please prep for said topic.
See, I wanted to surprise you live on stream with the
Yeah.
You're going to be planning a one shot.
Oh.
That reaction to be honest and true. This is in fact a reaction channel.
Scribble, were you here for that?
No, I must have missed that.
So randomly, while we were doing all of this, he goes, "Yeah, so on the next session, we're going to be having Nia DM the next, or I don't know, one shot."
I'll DM it. You're just gonna plan it. It's gonna be
okay.
Me teaching you how to plan a one shot.
Awesome.
And it's going to be a combination of Nia in the chat making suggestions. Me and whoever else is in the chat who is also experienced with DMing is we're going to work together to break down how each of us plans a one shot, and then you will take that advice, and from there we'll go step by step to planning out a one shot.
Well, I guess that covers the next topic then.
And that will be our next D&D one shot that we'll be playing on Roll20.
Oh my gosh, the pressure. Woo-wee. Okay. We'll try that out then. So when are we all free to do this? Or are we just doing it on Discord, the chat?
I mean, depending on whether or not you want to do another live stream, that's up to you.
Okay. We can do a live stream. I think if next time, if I'm gonna drop the StreamYard
We'll start
link.
the StreamYard thing.
Yeah. And if anyone else wants to be on camera, you know, so it's not just me. Fair enough.
Sure. Next time I turn my camera on, no problem.
Fist bump.
It's easy for you, Nia. You're pretty.
Stop. Don't you always say I'm lucky I'm pretty too? So yeah, if you guys all feel comfortable, one of these days you can be on camera. If not, I'll put something else on the back like I am today with this, or we'll have something else up.
Just have like cut out the squid from one of Rabbit's drawings and just have that up there. And
Yeah.
the squid on your shoulder.
There we go. Well, I will do that then. But yes.
But this was a lot of fun, and we covered some really good stuff today.
We did.
I hope you all had a good time. And thank you for the people who were in the chat and for all the questions and all the reaction suggestions.
Yes, there are a lot of suggestions. And thank you, Atomica. Thank you, Scribbling. Oh my gosh, I can't read. Thank you, everyone, for joining on Discord. Thank you for all the viewers. Thank you for the comments. Smash, especially you. Thank you for putting it together and coming up with the idea for all of this.
Oh, no worries. And also, again, thank you so much, Atomica and Scribble, for all of your wonderful advice as well. I love having, because we're all different people and we're all GMs of various skill levels, various experience levels, and various system experience levels. So I love having the different perspectives. I like having the fact that we all we do agree on a lot of things, but we also have different perspectives on a lot of things. And I love that because they're all right. Yes, well, we will absolutely do this again soon.
Sounds good.
A lot of fun to meet Atomica and Scribble.
Yes.
Met them in the here in Discord much. I have met them in Discord, but not like this.
Right, we haven't spoken.
It's nice to meet you too.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Good night,
absolutely.
everybody.
Good night.
Good night,
And Ray, go to bed.
yeah, go to bed.
All right, bye guys. Alrighty, see you all soon. Bye.
Bye.
Good night.